First, Deniz Tech will speak on the self-subjectivity of names.
What's in a name? Shakespeare's mused it. Now I muse it here on the stage. A name is usually how we identify each other, how we identify ourselves, and how we identify the things in the world around us. Say I had a piece of paper. A piece of paper is just a blank piece of paper. But if I turned around that piece of paper, it might be a flyer. It might be the flyer for this competition. It might be the flyer for the public speaking competition. That might be a name, and yet it might not be the name we perceive it as. For me, it could just be a piece of paper. That is the subjectivity of a name. My name is Deniz, Deniz, or Deniz. I just said 3 different names, yet all spelled the same and all me. The reason why I have this many names is because my name is spelled Deniz. Not the most usual spelling in an American context, but that's how I spell my name. That's how my parents named me. My parents, they call me Deniz. It's because that's the Turkish origin of the name. They are Turkish. But they'll go, Deniz, go take out the trash, and I'll have to go take out the trash. But at the same time, my best friend of 15 years, he calls me Deniz. It's not because he doesn't know how to pronounce my name as Deniz. It's because that's how we grew up. That's who I am to him. I am Deniz, but I'm also Deniz. Now, although I have these 2 options for how I like my name to be pronounced, I've also had it been pronounced Deniz. Now, Deniz, in my opinion, is not the correct way to pronounce my name. And yet, I had a professor during my freshman year who, after even correcting him once, he still called me Deniz for an entire semester. It's a bit odd. I still corrected him, and yet he perceived me as Deniz. After a while, I gave up on trying to correct him because he was in a position of authority over me, and I just didn't care after a while. I let him perceive me that way. But that doesn't mean I don't care about my name. It just means I didn't care how he saw me. I didn't care how he thought I should be named. Because my name, as I know, is Deniz. Now, my name is actually really important to me. My name comes from my parents who named me, but also comes from my sister, who actually suggested my name to my parents. My sister is 7 years older than me, and her name is Zeynep. Zeynep. Again, not the most usual name in an American context, but in my opinion, it's a very beautiful name. It translates to the Turkish word queen. That's a very powerful and beautiful name. But in 2001, after 9/11, and you all know what happened in 9/11, unfortunately, she was bullied by that name. She was victim of lots of Islamophobia and treated horribly. They turned something beautiful into something ugly. They told her to go back to her home country, even though she lived in the United States her entire life. So when I was born, she asked my parents to give me a name that more easily translated into English, into Americanism. They gave me Deniz, or Deniz. And although my name might have these kind of negative origins, I still love my name. I love my sister for giving me that name. And that's who I am. Now, a name isn't just the first name, it's also a middle and last name. My middle name is Şener, and my last name is Tek. Şener Tek is my grandfather's name, actually. And I got his name because I was born on the same day as him, February 19th, just recently passed. Now, I get to honor him through my middle and last name, and yet other people might not like to carry on the names of their fathers, grandmothers, mothers. Oftentimes, they are given the same name with a suffix at the end, like junior or senior, or first, second, third. Yet, some people really like carrying on the name. It shows an appreciation of the past. Yet, they might feel trapped. They might feel like they are not showing themselves, their individuality. Same thing goes for last names when people change them in communion and marriage. People often change their names to show they're one with their partner. And yet, other people decide not to, as a show of individuality of who they are. People change their names for many reasons. Like I mentioned before, they often change it in marriage, but they can also change it because they don't identify with their name they had. They might not no longer identify with it, or they may never have identified with it. A name is how we identify ourselves. It's how we identify ourselves against the grain of the world. So if someone doesn't feel like they have a name that they identify with, it's all in their right to change it. It might be because of their sexual orientation, it might be because of their gender identity, but it's a beautiful thing. And yet, going back to my sister, Zainab, she once considered changing her name when she was 27 and going into a professional field. She considered changing her name because she was worried that people wouldn't accept her as a doctor. She worried that because her name was a bit odd to Americans, they might reject her. They might not see her as one the same. So she considered changing it for a while, ultimately did not change it, but it was because of the societal pressure that she felt like she had to. Because they saw her as something that she didn't see herself as. And yet a name should be how we ourselves see ourselves. It's not really up to other people how they see us. We decide who we are, not others. It goes along with the same thing as companies as well. Say recently in the news, Twitter recently changed their name to X. Elon Musk bought it and decided to change it to X. And yet everyone still calls it Twitter, don't they? They still call it Twitter, and the user base still calls it Twitter. It's because in that example, Elon Musk, I guess, is the one assigning a name, and yet everyone who is in it still calls it Twitter. Because we all decide what we want to for our names and the names of the things around us. It's all subjective matter. Names are subjective, but they're also a product of self-determination. They're a show of our identity. Self-autonomy comes from self-determination, and it's all a matter of self-subjectivity. Thank you.